Welcome to Ace of Pentacles, your career strategy and workplace wellness podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm so happy you're here. Join me every week as we investigate how people design and discover their way through their careers. Together, we'll explore the science of well-being at work and discover tools and strategies to help us do well and be well. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ace of Pentacles, your career strategy and workplace wellness podcast. Today, we have with us Dr. C.A.R.E. Green-Forde. Dr. C.A.R.E. Green-Forde is the culture and well-being architect. She's a mental health executive, leadership strategist, transformational speaker, and founder and CEO of Dr. C.A.R.E. Speaks. Her strategic advisory and thought leadership firm partners with senior leaders and executives across high-impact organizations, including healthcare systems and social impact institutions. With more than 20 years of experience across behavioral health, healthcare, government, and mission-driven systems, Dr. C.A.R.E. works at the intersection of leadership, organizational culture, and well-being. She helps leaders address the root causes of workplace harm by examining leadership behaviors, power dynamics, and how culture and policy are operationalized day to day. Through keynotes, leadership development workshops, and short-term strategic advisement, she blends neuroscience, research, human behavior insight, and systems-level strategy to help leaders build trust, strengthen teams, improve retention, reduce organizational risk, and drive innovation and profitability. Dr. C.A.R.E.'s mission is to help leaders build workplaces worthy of the people inside of them. Dr. C.A.R.E., welcome to Ace of Pentacles.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here, and I so appreciate the various perspectives that your podcast brings and also your background. So this feels like I'm talking to someone I've known forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like when I was reading your summary, I was like, we literally do the same stuff. It's so cool. I love it. I'm so excited to learn from you today. I love your mission. I love, helping leaders build workplaces worthy of the people inside of them. So I'm very, very excited for our listeners to get to see how you do that.
Absolutely.
So let's start with this. Let's start with you telling us about yourself, what you are doing today, and how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you did so much of my introduction, and I appreciate it. So I won't necessarily fully go over that, but I am Dr. C.A.R.E., and I'm known as the culture and well-being architect. And I always tell people, first and foremost, I'm a woman of faith. My relationship with God is really important to me. I am a leadership strategist, a mental health executive, and a speaker. And my work really is about the intersection of leadership, organizational culture, and well-being. I look at this work through the lens of public health, particularly because I am a healthcare practitioner and systems thinker. And when I think through the reality of workplace culture, when I think through the reality of how that workplace culture translates in every system we operate in, healthcare, in education, going to the grocery store, I recognize that the workplace and workplace culture is one of the largest public health threats that we do not speak about. So many of us, especially as adults, spend most of our waking hours at work if we are privileged enough to have a job. And yet, the very place that we spend most of our time is often the place that is causing us harm and impacting our mental health, our physical health, our relational health, our social health, and everything in between. More importantly, I think through, especially in America, that often healthcare and access to healthcare is tied to the very same system that is causing you to have bad health. So if we don't address leadership accountability, if we don't address the inequities that exist within our systems, we are going to continue to see the same statistics that we see now. 76% of U.S. workers report having a mental health condition. 84% say that their jobs contribute to at least one of those conditions. And 70% of people globally, 70% say that their manager impacts their mental health more than their spouse or their therapist. That's wild. It's absolutely wild. So my work, it's really, how do we improve performance? How do we improve retention? How do we improve profitability, especially in systems where mental health, power, and inequity collide? Yeah, I think the next question was, how did I get here?
Yes. So I love that. Thank you so much. Those are staggering statistics. And we've all, anyone who's had a job feels it. Like, it. We've all had interactions in the workplace that make it really hard to show up,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are today and how did you get here? And I'm actually just going to ask my cat to go away because I just noticed she's in here.
A little distracting. It's all good.
So sorry. Okay.
No, this is life happening. Life
Okay.
all the time.
All the time.
So how I got here is layered, very layered, like many people. I am an immigrant from the Caribbean. I came to United States when I was a tween, and that shaped how I started to understand identity, belonging, systems. Growing up back home, I did not really understand systems of oppression. One, because as a child or as a teen, you don't really fully know those things, but also because I didn't recognize that the diversity that I experienced back home was something that in this country would be called out and looked upon and differently. My pediatrician was from India. My godmother, one is from Venezuela, the other one is from Martinique. I have friends who are of various backgrounds and cultures, different religions. I have family from Germany. So that was normal to me until I came to America and it started being pointed out. And I didn't understand it. And I remember when I was in my second year of my master's program, doing my internship, I had a supervisor say to me, "Claire, you do not understand internalized oppression." And he was right. I didn't, because I had my formative years back home. And so as I started working in America and became, I finished grad school, I think I was 21 or 22, started working and being exposed to a level of organization that I had not experienced because I was still insulated. College is insulating. On my campus, we had a hospital, we had help. I didn't have to go anywhere for anything. Dental clinic on campus, anything I needed, I just went there. And so when I came into the world, I started to see through work that people were navigating systems of oppression, yet being blamed as individuals for the very things that they did not create. I have worked in outpatient mental health, inpatient mental health, substance abuse, government, higher education, policy. I love policy and social impact. And I was like, why are these people having the same issues? I did direct practice and I said, okay, I have 25 clients and all of my clients have the same issue. It's not my clients at this point because they don't know each other. It's the system. And I remember one of the most poignant parts of my early career was having a child who, as I was in the criminal legal system, I have extensive background in the criminal legal system, who was getting admonished in court for being on drugs. I would speak to the parents and they would admonish him until I got the call from the child welfare system that his mother, who was pregnant, the baby was taken from her because the baby was born addicted to cocaine. It didn't dawn on me the entire time that his parents sat admonishing him that he came from an entire family of people who had substance abuse challenges. But yet this 14-year-old was standing in front of the court being held responsible for the weight of his family's trauma. And there were no services, there weren't supports. But I also saw that in order for his family to move through the system, parents needed to take time off of work because they would have to sit in court all day. That impacted their employment, which then impacted their ability to provide for their family, which then caused stress, which then meant they were using drugs, and the cycle continued. And so I said, this is systemic. And so I wanted to address those issues. And as I continued to work, I started navigating so much oppression in the spaces of work I was in, being silenced for asking questions, saying, well, why do we do it this way? Why do we close a case for someone if they miss 3 appointments when they live 2 hours away from the clinic and they have 3 kids they have to get after school? Why are we doing this? Well, that's just the way it's done. And when I started questioning those leadership decisions, boy, oh boy, did I get targeted.
Yeah. It sounds like you have built a chapter of your career based on what you experienced, knowing that it was unfair and unjust, and having lived that experience, you chose to step away and go do something to change it. And I love that. I have a similar story, but what's funny is I hear you talk about systems, and I was in HR for a long time in my career, and it took a long time for me to recognize that it's just so well established, like what a company does, how they do it, this whole idea of like, well, that's just how we do things, right? And there's so many things already in place, these barriers that are so hard to break down. I ended up leaving to work with individuals. You work on fixing systems, inspiring people to fix systems. And I very much work with people to help them understand, okay, how can you be well and do well within the system?
Hmm.
And I think they're two sides of the same coin,
Absolutely.
which is, I love that we're having this conversation because a lot of the times I feel like, okay, what am I doing to change the bigger problem? That what am I doing to fix the bigger problem? And I've always kind of gone back to, okay, I'm helping people, I'm helping individuals, I'm helping, smaller teams and individuals, helping them take control of their own well-being.
Hmm.
So I love that I get to learn from you about how you do this for entire ecosystems and the organization as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your mission is to help leaders build workplaces worthy of the people inside of them.
Hmm.
What does that actually mean practically? How do you do that? What does that look like in terms of your day-to-day work?
So I will say that the soundbite of this is working with people that were trying to survive systems to helping leaders transform the systems people were trying to survive. That's really the crux of this. And because I view it as a public health issue, because I view the concerns with chronic stress and workplace well-being and inaccessible healthcare, lack of culturally responsive care, the amount of time that we are putting in here and recognizing that the culture of the workplace is also directly tied to the wealth of a workplace, lead by talking about that with people. Organizations are made up of organisms, the people. And we often talk about it in a way that's very dystonic. Like it's so far away from us. But practically, this means helping people connect, similar to what you do, to their role in shaping systems. Often we feel disempowered because we keep making this system an inanimate object rather than recognizing that it is created by the individual's collective decisions or indecisions. Part of that work is helping people recognize you can change this. Everyone is a leader. The 2-year-old that makes you chase them in Target because they decided to strip off their pamper is absolutely leading people to do what they want them to do. So everyone's a leader. We're inherently born with this leadership capacity, but it's really about helping people look transparently and honestly at their workplace culture, their leadership accountability or lack thereof, and how it's aligned with the humanity of the people inside of it, including themselves. We talk about leaders as though they're not people. They are carrying the same caregiving burdens and the pressure and chaotic homes and trying to take a child, if they have a child, to band camp and football practice and navigate, all the emails at 2 in the morning. It's really helping people connect back to their humanity. Because if I keep approaching this system as an inanimate object, we never take accountability for our role in creating this system that is alive and well, because the outputs of this system are tangible, right? $300 billion a year US companies lose to mental health, unaddressed mental health, and toxic workplace cultures. That's a lot of money. That's a tangible impact to us continuing to maintain horrible cultures with no leadership accountability. And so I'm asking questions like, are people respected when they ask questions here? How do you feel here? How do you want people to feel? What is your end goal beyond the mission statement and the value statement that we all see on the website? And then we go, yeah, you're not living this. It's what are the behaviors that are conducive to human well-being and for the organization thriving? Because people and profits can thrive together. And that is the heart of this work. Are people given the tools, the resources that they need to survive? You are in HR. And so it's is HR able to support people, or are they just supposed to be your mouthpiece? Because I know HR has a very difficult balance of balancing the interests and needs of the employee with that of the organization. And that is a very hard thing because as an HR, you're also an employee of the same organization. And that is really difficult, right? And so are they supported to do what they need to do? Are they doing equitable compensation structures and are those in place? Are biases, racism, sexism, all the isms that are harmful tolerated because of someone's position, because of someone's title? Quick story, when I worked in a space that's in healthcare, I remember sitting in a meeting being demeaned. I mean, demeaned by the head of this department. And I went to HR and I said, this is incredibly unacceptable. And I was very young in my career. To be spoken to like this, to be told I was stupid, to be spoken down to, yelled at by an attending. And HR director said to me, yeah, this is really bad and this is really unhealthy, but this person is the chief of the department. Nothing can be done. You just have to accept it. That for me was when I first started realizing how organizational culture, without having the language, was shaped. And so my work is helping people understand your biggest asset is your people. And so the question for me is your workplace culture worthy of the skills, the brilliance, the innovation, the compassion, the creativity, the laughter, the experience that they bring? What is worth it for you? Is it your profit or your people? Because without your people, you have no profit. And that is the work that I do and the conversations that I'm having with organizations. And I do that through keynotes and workshops and very selective short-term strategic advisement, because for me, this work is deep work. And if you don't really want to do this work, we don't have to waste our time.
I hear that. As someone who was in that position, first of all, I'm sorry that you dealt with that where nothing could be done. It was said that nothing could be done. I'd like to offer a story of my own
Please.
for some perspective because I dealt with this, and this was one of the reasons why I chose to start my own practice, and I kind of looked at the problem in a different way at this point in my career. When I was head of HR, we had a situation where a C-level executive was not good for the firm, and, there were a lot of complaints, and it was just mainly, attitude and behavior in meetings. And it wasn't that hard for us to fire the C-level executive because we had several conversations. There was a performance improvement plan. It didn't work out, and we ended up letting that individual go.
Mhm.
Several months later, there was another person in the organization who was very problematic. People were really stressed out every time they worked with this person, not a C-level executive, but someone who generated a lot of revenue for the organization, right? The C-level executive did not generate revenue for the organization. So it was a little bit easier almost to be like, okay, well, this person's pissing a lot of people off. Like, here's how they're not really doing their job. They're not performing. Here's how we manage this.
Mhm.
And then it came to this point where now we're looking at people who are generating revenue for the organization. And that was when I kind of had to come to terms with my own values and go, we can't do something here.
Mhm.
And it was decided that we couldn't do something on multiple occasions because of the value, the profit that person was responsible for bringing into the organization.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that the different perspective I'd also like to offer is that's something that the leaders of these businesses also deal with, right? Like at the very top, like the CEOs, everyone's held accountable in some way, whether it's, you're a public company and you're held accountable for, the value of your company. In any case, everyone's held accountable for what your company is valued at. And so I think they also have this very real problem of like, do I disappoint the shareholders and the investors? Or do we just deal with this? Do we somehow internally like figure this out, make it go away or whatever? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think that's a very real perspective that needs to be kept in mind too.
No, it is. And I've
Yeah.
absolutely had these conversations. And my offer is I get that. But my work is helping leaders to examine the behaviors, the power dynamics, the culture, the patterns, the policy, and how it's operationalized every day, and going beyond that. Because culture is not what an organization says, it's what people feel. And when we say, because someone generates revenue, their behavior is tolerable despite the fact that they're costing us revenue. It costs on average 1.5 to 2 times more to replace an employee.
Mm-hmm.
You are saying this, let's make up a number. This person's generating $5 million for us every year. That's a major account. Okay. But 10 people have left in the last 2 years. Your reputation and brand is being damaged because people talk. And Glassdoor reviews, you can pay for them to come down, but screenshots are forever. Is it worth it? Because oftentimes I understand that this is a short-term insight where you're looking at the now. But when I ask
Mm-hmm.
you to tell me how much money, reputational damage, brand loyalty have you, or clients that you are not accessing because of this person or these people, your perception that they have value and you're holding on to this, when you are devaluing the 20 people impacted for this one, what you're telling these people is that their innovation, their efforts, what they bring. And I promise collectively, those 20 people probably bring in more money than this one person. And those 20 people bring more value to this organization than this one person. So it's your choice. Either we go through the pain for difficulty for the few months that is going to be uncomfortable and try to figure out how we replace this revenue, or you continue this where you continue to suffer reputational damage and irreparable harm because it's about the longevity and sustainability and the legacy of an organization. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, money comes and money goes, but your legacy, that is something that you can stand on. That builds generational brand loyalty. It builds connections to markets you would never think. It allows you to build verticals that you never thought of. So what are you stopping yourself from because you're holding on to this one thing? And those are not for me to answer, but those are the kind of questions I'm asking people to consider.
Yeah. They're very important questions. I think on a deeper level, the thing that you're forcing is getting people to think about performance in a much bigger way. Like, what is leadership performance? What is good performance in a leadership role or in any role at a company?
Yes,
And it doesn't just include bringing in revenue, right? Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. Claire, something you say that I love is work shouldn't hurt. And in our last conversation, you said something that really resonated with me with how I think about workplace wellness and psychological safety. You
Mhm.
said safety is subjective.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what that means for you?
Yes. So I expand this beyond safety because what is safe for me is not safe for you, and vice versa. I cannot tell someone what is safe for them. When I go into spaces and they say that, well, this is a safe space, for whom? And what defines safety? What are the perimeters and the boundaries of this safety? And we can do an example that the person who may be perceived as quiet at work, are they safe to be themselves? The person who may be an introvert, who may not speak in meetings because they're processing information and they're absorbing. Are they safe to be themselves? More than likely not, because when it comes to performance review time, they may be viewed as someone who is not an initiator. They may be viewed as someone who doesn't contribute well. They may be viewed as someone who's not dedicated. Even though this person has amazing work and relationships, is it safe for them to be themselves and to be introspective and to ask questions after the fact and to think about it? Oftentimes it's not. When I talk about safety, I use that example or similar because often, particularly in the American context, people start talking about race and gender and all the things that people are generally uncomfortable about, and then they instantly become defensive about. But when I say about somebody who's introverted or someone who's extroverted, more people can identify with that. But it's the same thing. Are you safe is so subjective in the same way, and we talked about also in terms of brave spaces. By whose standard? Is it is it for me as an immigrant, as a Black presenting woman, as someone with non apparent disabilities? What is brave for me sometimes is not saying anything so that I protect my peace and my well being. Because bravery doesn't always mean that you speak up. Sometimes it means you know when to stand still or that you need to stand still. And we don't, the conversation for me needs to be expanded that way because a lot of our research, a lot of things that we base on are based on dominant culture and they leave out a lot of intersecting realities. And so that's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah. I think about this a lot, this whole safe space, brave space dynamic, right? When it comes to workplaces. How do you personally think about and advise leaders to build workplaces that are not only safe, but also encourage growth?
So I talk about psychologically honoring workplace cultures because when we lead with honor, that allows us to be curious, it allows us to be humble, and it allows us to be collaborative. What is honoring for me will vary, but when we start asking people what they need, responding to what they need, explaining where our limits or boundaries are, that creates a space where we can co create That's where growth happens. Growth matters. It is absolutely why I believe that workplaces should be places where people can learn and question and stretch and be challenged and, try the things they've never tried before, build the skills, learn from different generations, and have all of these different innovative ideas. It's where I think it can challenge a workplace, can challenge you without dehumanizing you. And that's the piece. You can hold people accountable without humiliating them. I always tell people empathy is it is not a soft skill because empathy requires accountability. When we speak about growth, those are all the things I'm talking about on not just the growth edges, but the center, the messy middle. How do we grow through that messy middle? So, and we're in a way that we're not forcing, but we're also setting the tone of being clear what our expectations are, right? This is what we expect here. It's doing what we say we do publicly and privately. There's no one that you can meet in my life that would say that Claire drinks alcohol. I don't. If I ever was arrested or God forbid, or someone's like, she was drunk driving, no one in my life would tell you that's true. They would tell you that that's a setup because publicly and privately, that has been consistent for years. There's no one in my life that could tell you that I got into a fight with someone, I was cussing somebody out. Like, no, I have friends that do not curse around me because they're like, Claire doesn't really curse. Sometimes I do, but that's the way they view, because publicly and privately, it's the same. And so it's about structure, because growth does require structure as well. That structure, that consistency, as humans, and you've studied psychology, we need structure to thrive. Boundaries are helpful. We need to know boundaries. Children thrive at boundaries. Where can I go? Where can I not go? It helps us become safe, right? And so this growth also requires us to have clear expectations and consistent accountability and healthy communication and feedback loops. Partnership with HR and allowing HR to do HR and not be pressured because the CEO said, but be independently functioning while collaborative, a true HR business partner. That level of leadership. Because when we understand that, then we understand that discomfort has always been part of growth. But discomfort doesn't mean that you're being harmed. Right. And so when I think about growth, that's what I think about and why it's so important and how we can actually grow through all these different spaces and grow through these challenges. That for me is where the heart of this is.
Yeah. To what extent do you believe that psychological safety and personal well-being is the job of an organization? And to what extent is it the job of an individual?
I love this question. It is everyone's job, but the responsibility is not equally distributed. So individuals absolutely have a responsibility for their own well-being, self-awareness, growth, boundaries, healing, communication practices, how they show up, what supports they engage if they have access to those supports. That's a caveat. How we show up at work, how we show up with our family, our friends, etc. But individual wellness is often exploited because we use the lens of resilience. And I always tell people resilience has a limits because rubber bands break and so do people. But there's no more rubber bands to replace you because you're an individual. There's no pack of you to replace when you break. But individual tools cannot override chronic toxic workplace cultures, unmanageable workloads, biased leadership, inconsistent accountability, horrible policies and culture impact. Your individual tools cannot override that. I actually did a post on LinkedIn this week and I said, therapy cannot override toxic workplace culture. It can't. So you're offering wellness apps and Talkspace and BetterHelp, but if your workplace culture is toxic, no amount of therapy is going to address that because environment is one of the biggest predictors of change. So as someone who is trained in mental health, I also, talk to you about, my aversion to the word resilience. I think that when we use this and we think through the role that leaders have in cultivating workplaces that don't require people to submit their humanity and their health, that to me is where more of the responsibility rests. Because as we talked in the beginning of this, when I was talking about the court system and that child, it's systems that people create and maintain. You cannot keep asking people to become better at surviving dysfunction and toxicity and refusing to examine the systems that are creating the dysfunction in the first place. That to me is absolutely ludicrous and bonkers. Organizations are absolutely responsible. Organizational leaders, the people that set the tone, the people that set the culture, the policies, enforce them or don't enforce them, are absolutely responsible for the conditions they create. Leaders are absolutely responsible for the cultures that they shape. And that is including workload, it includes feedback. We know all of the research about the types of feedback people get based on their intersecting identities. Women tend to get feedback that is generally that's based in feelings and vibes versus tangible things. And so we also know that leaders are responsible for whether harmful behavior is tolerated, including the example you gave of because somebody's bringing in money or seen as that way, what are we tolerating? So yes, I have seen environments where someone's behavior has been actually harmful. And just interesting enough, that same HR director, I later experienced sexual harassment from that person, that same HR director. And so it was just, I left, right? I left.
Yeah.
But yes, individuals have a responsibility, but organizations have to stop outsourcing workplace wellness to the people being harmed inside of their workplace.
Yeah. This idea of toxic workplace culture, I think it's really interesting because I remember once I was sitting in a meeting and I said, as HR, I was like, this is the most toxic workplace I've ever been in. I was HR.
Yeah.
And I said that out loud. And then I caught myself and I was like, oh boy, because this was a leadership team meeting. And I said that. And then I started thinking, what makes this place toxic? Because just to be clear, I've worked at really high performing tech companies. This was
Mhm.
not one of them.
Mm.
And so I was really surprised. High performing. And sometimes when we say high performing, we're really just saying it's a hard workplace too. And, these companies like Tesla and AWS have their reputations that they do.
Mhm.
There are articles about how people cry at Amazon, right? But this place, in my mind, was the most toxic workplace I'd ever been at. And so I started thinking a lot about this, what is a toxic workplace culture specifically? Because I think we throw that word around a lot. We say this person's toxic and this relationship's toxic and this workplace is toxic. But I don't know if we all agree on what is toxic. What does that actually mean in terms of the observable behaviors of a workplace, a person, a relationship, right? So I'd like to ask you, from your experience and from the way that you work, what you do, what do you describe as a toxic workplace?
I think it goes back to the example that you gave. The trade-offs we make to people's humanity, our unwillingness to address harm when we are aware of it and it's reported because of putting the value or perceived value of someone else or a practice or a policy above the interest of the whole. Toxic workplace culture for me is one where there's no accountability or inconsistent application of accountability. A toxic workplace culture is one where discrimination of any form is allowed and it's persistent, where there's no clear policies and structures in place that are consistently enforced, regardless of someone's role, title, or contributions. A toxic workplace culture is one where people have to ask for their basic needs to be met. A toxic workplace culture is one where people are afraid to speak up, afraid to answer questions, where there's a lot of gossip, where there's a lot of absenteeism and presenteeism, and where people are literally unwell and how that shows up. A toxic workplace culture is one where people are punished for challenging the status quo. And I know that because I lived through it. I know it because I research and read the articles and talk to people. It is one where you have panic attacks on Sunday night, where you sit in your car on the subway crying, where you have to pray if you have a religious belief system before you enter a meeting and throughout the meeting, where you are afraid to go to HR. I have worked with horrible HR. I have worked with HR that delayed my getting health care because of how difficult they were with my healthcare providers. I have now lived with the lifelong burden of dis-ease in my body because of navigating toxic, harmful, racist workplace cultures. And now I live with what it has done to my body, irreparable damage to my body. I have autoimmune disorders I never had before as a result of that. I lost a loved one 2 years ago to breast cancer, and watching someone you love die sucks. And I've done this journey a lot, but it was really painful in many ways, spiritually, socially, emotionally. But I can tell you that one of the most painful things for me was this person worked for a healthcare organization. This organization fired this person knowing that they had cancer, and that was the only thing allowing them to get treatment. They could have just extended. This is a billion-dollar organization, $50,000, $100,000 healthcare compared to the CEO's $50 million bonus. That is a toxic workplace culture where we dehumanize people, where we treat people as though they are replaceable, where we do not have empathy, where we don't hold accountable, and where we allow unprocessed behaviors and power structures to absolutely harm people and cost them their lives.
I'm really sorry that you've had to deal with everything that you've had to deal with because that sucks. And I agree with you. I think HR needs to do better. I think businesses need to do better. I agree that the distribution of that responsibility is not equal.
Yeah.
I think an individual can only be as resilient and as empowered as the organization or the system allows them to be.
Absolutely. But I would also say, I have a twin sister and she's an HR guru and professional. She's done global HR, tech companies, media, all the things. And so HR is human too, right? There's often this dehumanization that happens when people talk about HR. I understand how difficult it is. Again, you are an employee. You're often in very impossible or difficult circumstances. That's why there's HR for HR, right? It's not an easy position to be in. I do think that collectively, if the human aspect gets highlighted in the human resources, if we don't say HR, if we say human resources, if we remember that the focal point is human, your humanity and that of other people, and HR leaders are supported and help to cultivate the culture that they know will be better for the organizations, truly serving as business partners, I absolutely know that it can turn around.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think in order to do that, and for me, it always goes back to the individual. I think the individuals who choose to be in HR need to be incredibly resilient, incredibly educated in what they're doing and how they're doing it. And to some extent, I think HR kind of needs to be a little bit fearless because business leaders will come to you and go, no, we're not going to do this because we don't have the money or we don't have the budget or we're not going to fire that person or we're not going to talk to that person about their performance because technically that's not performance. That's how they're making people feel. And I've known lots of HR people who will go, okay. I've been one of those HR people who was like, okay, well, that sucks. But then I left
Yeah.
because I was like, that's not what I'm signing up for.
Yeah. Yeah. But HR is absolutely part of shaping that culture. And
Hmm.
look, you can advise people. Even we are both trained in mental health. You can't make people do something. You can advise them.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we document. This is my advice. You go ahead and do that. And when it hits the fan, you figure it out. This was my recommendation. You can take it or leave it. I'm going to give
Yeah.
you informed consent. I'm going to tell you the pros, the cons. We'll bring the lawyers into the conversations if they need to put the fear of God in you. But ultimately, this is your decision. And as long as you're willing to take responsibility for your decision, that's okay. I will not participate in this. I have absolutely worked in spaces where I was told to do something that was unethical. And I put it in black and white that I was not going to do it not going to do it. I said, just to be clear, this is what you're asking me to do. This is retaliatory. This is bias. I will not participate. If you choose to write me up as a result of it, no problem. It's all in black and white. We need to document. I think that is one of the biggest things we need to document. And because that also helps us to be more fearless, if so to speak. Because when we say something, I had a supervisor who always said, if it's not written, it didn't happen. I can deny anything you said. I can't deny what you wrote. That has always stayed with me. I am very big on policies, and I would drive people upset or cuckoo local bananas because I would go back. What is the written policy? When someone, is this a practice? Is this a preference or is it a policy? That is something I always ask. I need to see the written policy, and often there is none. It's a practice. It's a preference. It's what we're used to. I think if HR and other people, employees included, become familiar with the SOPs, you are
Hmm.
more empowered because you're not doing something that is else. It's not based on feelings now. We're now talking about facts. We have to be more fact-based in how we approach things because we can absolutely balance the fact and the feelings, but you cannot
Hmm.
deny you cannot deny what's in black and white. I wish HR leaders were much more firm
Yeah.
and clear because I know that an organization can absolutely turn around that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm currently I'm coaching a team and I'm working with a leader who I'm so impressed by. He is having me
coached individually people on his team, and it's been very much about getting to like the root cause of the problem, of the
Mhm.
troubling dynamics,
Mhm.
as opposed to let's just put a policy in place or let's put a
Yeah.
practice in place. He's starting from kind of the ground up, and there are very, very few, I think, people who honestly have the bravery to invest the time, the resources, the effort in that,
Yeah.
to bring in someone and go, I don't want to just like change the structure. I don't want to just assign titles. I don't want to do this like performative stuff. I want you to sit down with people and figure out how can we help them?
I love
How
that.
are they not doing well and how can we fix it?
I love it. Literally, when you were speaking, I said, "That's empathy in action," because
Mhm.
empathy says, "How is this landing and what's happening beneath the surface?"
Yeah. Yeah. And I, as a consultant and a coach, I go above and beyond for that person and that team. I'm rarely very available via text, but that entire team, they can text me anytime. They can call me. Like, I respond right away. I will spend time on the weekends because I see how much he cares for his
Yeah,
employees.
that's rare. Yeah. That to me is how we when we talked earlier about growth, that's how that growth happens. And when I said to you, I'm interested in partnering with organizations that are truly about this work because otherwise it's a waste of time. Because you get that level when people are aligned and when they get it, you're not trying to convince people and change them. It allows the growth to happen. And then you are also connected to it more. So they benefit more. That organization, whoever that leader is, kudos to them. Give them all the hearts and all the, confetti emojis. Because for me, that leader, that person is helping to change the trajectory of someone's life. I always say, if you can change a person, you can change a family. And if you can change a family, you can change a community. And if you can change a community, you can change the world. Because for someone, you are their world. Person in this position as a leader, they are helping to shape the world of those around them. And those people then shape the world of them. It's a ripple effect. That is absolutely incredible. And how awesome that they have you there for that because you're able to help them go deeper and to connect that. And so now you're also putting those ripple effects and that multiplies. That's what we need. We need more people like you. We need more people like that. We need more people that are combating the very, very unhelpful, erroneous assumptions that leadership is just a title and not a verb.
Absolutely. And we need people like you who are leading these conversations that are so, so necessary. So thank you for what you
Yeah.
do.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Claire, as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add, share with our audience?
One, I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. This conversation flew by, and I literally feel like we've had this conversation 12 times before, and we have not. So many different things as you were talking. I wanted, like, yeah, we could talk about this, we could talk about that as well. But I would invite leaders and everyone to recognize that they're a leader. As I gave that example of the 2-year-old running naked in Target, they're a leader. I would invite people to ask themselves, what am I creating? What legacy am I building? What am I tolerating? What am I repairing? What am I refusing to address? And how does that impact those around me? The stay at home parent is a leader in their home. They're the CEO, CO, CAO, all those. They're that just as much as a person who may be running a grocery store or a movie theater or a hospital or a tech company because people do not experience culture through mission statements. I've been in healthcare, social impact, government. I promise you, they're very beautifully written mission statements. I mean, they could rival Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
But the culture of the organization, the harm I experienced, the harm other people experience, was real. People experience your culture through your meetings, through the decisions, your policies, your communication, and what they see you practice. It's that saying, your children will do what you do, not what you say. People do what you do, not what you say. I want people to consider that if we want healthier people, individuals, and healthier workplaces, we have to build cultures individually and collectively where people can do meaningful work without sacrificing their humanity. For me, it is absolutely devastating that depression and anxiety are the leading causes of disability in the world, according to the World Health Organization. And every year, organizations lose 12 billion working days a year due to unaddressed mental health needs, including depression and anxiety. And I go back to the statistic I shared in the beginning. 76% of US workers have a mental health condition, and 84% say their jobs are contributing to at least one of them. I want you to consider what you are losing, the billions of dollars you are costing your company, the reputational damage, because you refuse to do the work, uncomfortable work to grow. Work should not hurt. It should never hurt. Maybe if you're a WWE wrestler, but even that's fake, right? Just saying. And if it does, leaders, and everyone is a leader, has the responsibility to ask why, to ask who is being harmed, and to ask what is being protected at what expense. And we have to ask what needs to change and bring in people like me, like you, to help change that. Because sometimes you need an outside perspective, unbiased perspective, a perspective that is not going to be rooted to my paycheck. I have to tell you whatever you want to hear. Sometimes you need that because we absolutely have the ability to create the cultures, the organizations, and the healing that we want to see.
Absolutely. Dr. Claire Green-Forde, I have loved our time together. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise, and your voice. I'm going to drop your information in the show notes. For those of you listening, I encourage everyone to connect with Dr. Claire on LinkedIn. Keep an eye on her work because I think it's really important. And I think you're going to do some really fantastic things. You already are, but I can't wait to see how you grow.
I welcome it. And if people are looking for keynotes or workshops or strategic advisors around this, I absolutely welcome connecting. As you know, this work is not easy, and it's not because sometimes people are uncomfortable engaging this work. But I know that it makes an absolute difference because I have seen it and I have lived it. And so I believe it. Thank you again, truly.